This is my story of how I ended up receiving a breast cancer diagnosis at the age of 36. This is part one of my story where I'm going to share with you how this all began and a little bit about what happened throughout the process of receiving the diagnosis and meeting with doctors and things like that. And also my first response to the news and how I took it, because I think there's some very key things there that are important for setting you up for success in healing. If you do receive a diagnosis that could be alarming or scary at first. And in part two, I will get more into detail about what I tried and what I've learned since receiving the news, what healing modalities worked, what didn't work for me personally, as I did not follow all of the recommendations from conventional medicine. And so while I'm really going to be focusing on self-healing and natural healing, because that is the path that I decided to go down, and I think it's important to share what I've learned because a lot of this is just not known. People don't talk about it. It's not easy to find a lot of this information, but it can be life-changing and life-saving. So that's why I'm here with you today. Because I really feel called to share this with you, that you know, A, that you're not alone if you are going through something like this, or if you do at some point, perhaps this can help you to prepare and know how to receive this information, and just be aware that there are other opportunities. There are other options apart from just the traditional, medical procedures that convention medicine often offers. Do consult with your physician, do hear them out, but what I encourage you to do from there is to do your own research and to really work on getting to know yourself, connecting with yourself, and to discover what is the best path forward for you, as this is going to be different for everyone. So keep that in mind also as you're watching this video and part two, which is coming up, because I'm just sharing my story and what worked for me. All right, this is not medical advice, but I do believe that this can save lives, which is why I'm doing this. Honestly, I've had a lot of doubts and hesitations about recording this video. It's required me to confront a lot of my fears, to be honest, of judgment and what other people may think, because I know not everyone is going to agree with the decisions that I made and how I decided to move forward after receiving the news. But that's okay. Take what resonates with you, take what you find valuable, and the rest, leave it at the table, or of course just go watch another video if you don't resonate with this. But I know that there are some of you out there who may be going through something similar, or perhaps just are afraid of perhaps going through something similar at some point of your life. Some of the things that I've learned can be very freeing, inspiring, and encouraging for anyone going through a process like this. So I encourage you to keep an open mind and just know that there are other possibilities. There are other options for you. And I'm going to get more into that in part two. So subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, and click that little bell button so that you get notified when the next video comes out. Okay, so I want to tell my story from the beginning, sort of as I experienced it. There are things that now, looking back, I've realized have been precursors to getting to this point. Perhaps we could call them mistakes or just decisions that I made throughout my life, some conscious, some unconscious, but also just other things that I was exposed to unintentionally throughout my childhood, etc., that have all contributed in some way to getting me to this point. And these are some of the things I really had to work through, to go within, to discover about myself, and to work on reframing later on in order to begin the healing process. However, that is something I didn't realize till after, and so that's something I'm going to go into more detail about in the next video in part two. So we're gonna start with where it all began for me, which was in about 2018, I think the end of 2018, or perhaps early on in 2019. So this was several years ago before the diagnosis. I first noticed that I had a nodule in my breast, right? That's where it began. And at first, my initial reaction to that was fear, of course. However, at that point, I was familiar with things like the law of attraction, but I didn't understand it fully. And, certain things I had manifested in my life, I had attracted into my life that were once just a dream. And so on the one hand, I knew that it was real, and I knew that I could manifest or bring things into my reality that I desired, that I could see in my mind before it even existed. However, yes, I still had a lot to learn, and I didn't always go about things in the right way, but I had the intention of being positive, right? Later I learned about toxic positivity, and I think that was an issue that I had as well. This is kind of an example in the sense that I decided to just ignore it, right? If I don't give it attention, then it's not going to get energy, and it's probably just going to go away. Actually, I have had similar experiences before related to my body and just other things in life where, I've sort of ignored it, and with time it just went away. So I thought I could do that in this case as well. And there is a part of that that is true. However, I definitely don't recommend just ignoring it. I'll get to this more later on in this video, and more so in part 2. Anyways, so that's what I did. First, I just ignored it, sort of, right? I ignored it on a conscious level. I decided to not give it attention or to go get it checked out. But the truth is, it was always in the back of my mind, right? There was the fear of it was lingering and following me around everywhere. And as much as I tried to ignore it, fear-based thoughts and feelings continued to pop up, and I would just, ignore it. The point is, I thought I was ignoring it because I was consciously trying to do that. However, I was carrying around the fear of it everywhere I went. So really, I was not ignoring it at all. And it was kind of creating this energy around me of fear. I spent at least a couple of years, I think, in this way. I also had a lot going on in my life at that point. My husband and I adopted our beautiful daughter, and she was 4 when we adopted her. It was quite a crazy, chaotic time going through that adaptation process. So part of this too was just feeling like I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, I don't have the bandwidth to deal with this, right? There's so many other things going on. I was neck deep in a business that I had just started as well at the end of 2018. And yeah, there's so many things going on in my life, and it felt very chaotic that I just didn't even really have the energy, the time, or the space, the mental capacity to deal with this. So I just continued to ignore it. Every once in a while I would check it, and I would just continue through there. However, I did eventually decide to go to the doctor because, it was on my mind. It was on my mind. As much as I tried to ignore it, it kept coming back and kind of haunting me. So I decided I have to do something about this. So I went to see my gynecologist, and we started some testing. And all of the tests that we did came out fine, right? Normal, within normal ranges. It all looked okay. So we just continued to monitor it every, I think, 3 to 6 months. And then eventually the doctor recommended a biopsy. And so I went in to get this done. In case you're unfamiliar, what they do in this type of biopsy is they poke the area with a needle and basically draw out liquid and then examine the liquid, right? So that's the process that I had done. It was pretty easy, calm, not that painful, not a big deal. And when the results came back, it came back as benign. This is what my doctor had recommended to me. I know not all doctors would recommend the same thing, and I do want to say I believe the doctor that I was seeing was a little bit of, he thought outside of the box, maybe not what all doctors would recommend. And I'm not saying his recommendations were correct or not or anything. I'm just letting you know what happened. This is my story, right? So I decided to leave it. I had also spoken with friends and just seen things on the internet, about having a lumpectomy and getting it removed, how it could potentially change the appearance of the breast. And this was something that I was very afraid of. And I'll get to that more in a moment because that's not what happened. I think it really depends on the procedure that on the procedure and who does it. Anyways, at that point, we decided to leave it and continue monitoring it. As we continued to monitor it, though, things started to change. I started to feel a little bit different, and I noticed some changes. I decided I'm going to explore the option of having it removed. So I went to meet with a surgeon, and he recommended having it removed, told me how the process would work, and he reassured me that there would be no, deformation, that the appearance of the breast would not be compromised because of the technique that he used. So after some careful consideration, I decided to move forward with the surgery. I had the surgery, it was removed, that all went smoothly, and the appearance and everything remained intact, as he told me, so I was very happy with that. However, I started the recovery process, right, of the surgery, and what I noticed very quickly after, maybe 2 months, maximum 3 months after the surgery, I realized that there were what seemed to be scar tissue at first, I thought, but as I continued to heal and it didn't go away, I realized that no, these were actually new nodules that had been formed. And I did get this confirmed with my doctor as well. So this was the beginning of my wake-up call. Up until this point, I basically thought, you know what, okay, I can't just ignore this. This is something, right, that I need to deal with on a physical level. I need to go in and physically get it removed, and then everything's going to be fine, right? That's why they do this. They remove it, and then everything's fine, as long as, you know, they get all of it, or if not, they may recommend some treatments, right? So that's what I had believed. Now, within this time, I had also received the news, the results from the other tests that they did, you know, after the surgery. And this time it came back positive. I was told that actually they did find some cancer. And so I was told I'd have to go in for some further testing, and then from there we would see what treatments would be recommended. However, this was sort of the first alarm bell that went off for me, the first red flag, because I thought, well, okay, even if that were the case, you took it all out, right? Why do we need to continue with more treatments? Especially because I know that these treatments, you know, they're not things that are healthy or natural to be putting in your body. They can be very toxic and damaging for your body. So I was very cautious about that. Either way, this was a real wake-up call for me, right? Like, how could I receive such news at the age of 36, and somebody who I've always considered myself to be very healthy, very fit, and I believe that's how people have mostly seen me as well. That's sort of the image and the reputation that I projected also, and that I honestly wanted people to see me as. So it was very hard for me to accept this, and I initially sort of received it as like a failure, or, you know, I felt very ashamed. And so it's been a process for me to work through that, especially to getting to the point now where I'm here sharing it with you, because I would have preferred to keep this as a secret and just nobody know. But no, God or the universe or whatever you want to call it, some higher power than me is, you know, has been calling me to share this. And so here I am, humbled, sharing this with you. Yes, my initial reaction and response to the news was, you know, I was devastated. I was confused, I was shocked, and I was ashamed, I was scared, I was all of the things. However, I did not believe or fear death. You know, I didn't believe this was going to kill me. I didn't believe I was going to die because of this, or like this was life-threatening. There was something within me that, I don't really know how to describe it, but there's something within me that I felt that this was just an opportunity for me to change the direction of my life and how I was living my life. Because almost simultaneously, at the moment of receiving this information, I also realized that I was not living the life that I desired, and I was not happy. And even though things may have seemed nice and happy and great from the outside, and even though I had manifested a lot of things into my life that I had always dreamed of, you know, I was living basically my dream marriage with my dream husband I had been dreaming about since I was a kid. I was living here in Ecuador where I live now, which was also just a dream at one point. I had, you know, a beautiful daughter. I was a mom, even though, you know, I had my own complications and serious doubts if that would ever be possible for me. And I'll talk more about that at another time. But there were so many things that I was like, how have I been able to achieve all these things and have almost everything that I've always desired? A new business that's working well, that's successful, you know, all these amazing things. Yet I realized that I was not happy. I was not enjoying these things. I was not really present in my day-to-day life and living this life that I had always dreamed of. I was taking it for granted, and I was really I had anger issues. I was very irritable. I was anxious all the time. I often didn't feel good physically as well, in the sense that I was bloated a lot of the time. I realized after I had started to make certain changes with the food that I was eating, that I had brain fog all the time, like chronic brain fog that I didn't even know I had until it was gone. So in that moment, I just thought, and had this inner knowing as well, that this is not the end for me, and this is not going to break me. This is going to be the stepping stone that I needed to get to, you know, a new future, a new life, to change me, to change my life, to change the way that I'm living, and to really fully live life and enjoy it. Because I knew that I wasn't, and I think I already always had this sort of in the back of my mind, but you know, I didn't allow myself to fully accept this truth until I was faced with this information, and basically forced to make a choice. Either you change and you use this as a way to create a new life and to really find that happiness and self-love, because I also knew that was I also had this instant sort of knowing that that was one of the reasons that I was there, because I was giving to everyone so much all the time, my entire life, worried about what other people would say, trying to get everyone else's approval, and give, that I was forgetting about myself. And I wasn't giving anything to myself, I wasn't loving myself, and I put everyone else first. And I knew that that had to change, and so many things had to change. And so I let it out, I let myself, you know, feel the fear, you know, the shame, all the things that came with that information. And then I said, okay, this is the time, right? Like, this is my time, this is my opportunity. And from this moment on, I'm gonna do everything I can to use this as that stepping stone to getting where I want to be. Okay, so that was my first wake-up call, just receiving the news, right? You know, then as I continued to recover from the surgery, and I started researching and looking into, okay, what can I do? What can I do to begin to take better care of myself and of my body, and to make these changes? And the easiest, most obvious thing for me at the time was to change my diet, right? Change what I was eating, and just in general, make more healthy choices. So that's what I started to do. You know, I changed to a vegan diet, then to a raw vegan diet. I did only fruit for a while. These were all things that I had researched and that made sense to me in regards to cleaning the body and restarting it so that everything, you know, works as it should, and to building up my immune system. And this is where I did begin to experience some noticeable changes. Like, the brain fog went away, the bloating went away, I had more energy, I could think more clearly, you know, a lot of good things came from that. But I continued with the raw vegan diet, and then I also did like a 2-week juice cleanse and other things like that in between there. But this went on for about 8 months or so. And then I kind of stopped for a moment and realized, okay, I've been doing this for 8 months. What has come out of it? It's this working. And even though, like I just mentioned, there were a lot of good things and positive results that came from this, in regards to this particular situation, you know, the particular diagnosis, I realized that it wasn't really giving me the results that I wanted, that I desired. And actually, about 2 months or so after the surgery, you know, very quickly after, I went back to the surgeon to get something checked out, as I thought it might be scar tissue, you know, in the area where the nodule was removed. But he actually confirmed that they were new nodules that had been formed. And so that for me was another wake-up call. I was like, are you serious? Right? Like, I just did this surgery, which took a lot of courage and just very careful thought and consideration to actually get up the courage and everything to go through the surgery. I did the surgery, and now I'm in all of this recovery and everything for it to just come back. And then in this case, it didn't just one come back, now there were 2. And so I was like, wow, like, what was the point of that, right? Like, why do they even do these surgeries? And, you know, everyone's story is different, right? For some people, they do it, and that's probably it, at least for the time being. But it just came back so quickly for me that I was like, there's something here that I need to look at closer. There's something here that I need to take a closer look at. Like, this is insane. And so that was really the point where I decided, you know, I need to figure this out for myself. And the route of conventional medicine, or what the doctor is recommending to me that I do, is not going to help me. Again, this is my own personal case. I'm not saying it won't necessarily help you, and I believe that each person should make their own decision on what they feel is best for them. And if you do feel safer or more optimistic, following conventional medicine's recommendations, then you should probably go with it, because one of the things that I've learned more than anything else is the importance of your mindset, your psyche, and how you view the situation. Your thoughts and your feelings about these things are so important, and they absolutely contribute to the results that you're going to get to your healing, or not, right? So keep that in mind. But I realized that this is not going to work for me. Like, that did nothing, basically. So that's when I got really serious about the food changes, right? And continued that for about 8 months. But then I had to stop and assess everything, and I realized, okay, like, nothing's really changed. So maybe there's something else to this, right? Maybe it's not really just the physical. Maybe it's not just cleaning out the body. Maybe there's something else to this. And this is when I really started to explore other things, other healing modalities, and I began to look more into the psychology behind health, the psychology of dis-ease, and how our thoughts and feelings can affect our biology. And I learned so many fascinating things that have made such a big difference for me, that have helped me so much, to where now not only do I know and am 100% sure of what the originating cause was, what the and really it was a number of things leading up to this that contribute to this, but then there was one event that happened in my life that I know that basically triggered this response in my body, triggered my genes to react in this way. That's how I got to the place of receiving this diagnosis. But not only have I discovered the cause, I've discovered then how to resolve the situation. And it's been a process, and it's been a process of deconditioning and peeling back the layers of limiting beliefs and thought processes that have gotten me here. But as I began to acquire this information and to acquire these tools and work with them and make these changes in my life, healing truly began, and I began to see the changes, the positive changes, the results that I was looking for and that I knew were possible this whole time. So that is what I'm going to get into more in detail in part 2. What are these changes that I made? What are the things that I learned about how the psyche affects the body, and how all dis-ease and imbalance in the body really does initiate in the mind, in the psyche, which affects the brain, which then affects the body, to be more specific. And therefore, how important it is to work with the psyche, to work with your deep-seated subconscious beliefs and how you react to different situations, how you view yourself. I really had to learn how to love myself and to give myself the love, the patience, the attention, and the grace and forgiveness that I give to other people in my life, right? So I began on this journey of understanding this and applying this in my life, which has led me to where I am today, where, perhaps I will always be healing to some degree, but I'm at the point where I am no longer afraid, and I am confident in knowing that I understand my body so much more, I understand myself so much more, and just that I have the tools now, the tools and the understanding needed to not only continue and complete the healing process, but I also know that any other similar situation that I could find myself in my life, I will be prepared to work through it, to resolve it, and to heal myself. I finally began to see the physical results. It all begins from within. It's what's within is without, and what's above is below. So we can't just work with the physical and with the exterior. We need to begin to work with the inner, which is where this all came from, which is where the root cause lies. And this is the biggest lesson that I've learned and that I want to share with you. So I can't wait to tell you more about what that process has been for me and all the things that I have learned, which I will summarize in part 2 of my story. and I will share more and get more into in other videos to come as well. So stay tuned for that, subscribe if you haven't yet, and let me know in the comments if there's anything else you want me to share more in depth, if you want to learn more about. I'm happy to do that in upcoming videos. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next video.